and let us all do we can to build a better future.
We've been seeing on social media this group of Gen Z influencers who are associated with the White House, the DNC. They're hyping up Joe Biden. Now, look, I understand getting involved in politics. It's a pretty big deal. It's a monumental task to do. All right, and look, I'm not going to tell people how to vote. I won't do that. But I've been noticing something with this new crop of DNC sycophants. I don't think they know what they're talking about. I don't think they fully understand. Now, obviously, I want to be careful with the word grifter here, but it seems like they're all in on just reading the talking points. Now, I have two clips here in which these two young men are talking to none other than Tim Dillon. Now, perhaps it's up to all of you to decide whether or not they're authentic or they understand the policies that's being, that they have to read. Maybe they do, maybe they don't know. But it's rather getting quite embarrassing for the Democrats that this is how low they have fallen. We have seen all the reports as it stands right now that Joe Biden and the Democratic Party have made it very clear there will be no primary debates. There will be no conversation. So that means Marianne Williamson and RFK Jr. cannot introduce themselves on the main stage or challenge Joe Biden himself. To which, again, I have to say to all these TikTok influencers, how is it that you can hype up your guy when at the same time he's not going to show his strengths or his debate skills against two Democratic challengers? But I guess we should expect this from the Democratic Party after all. I want to pull up this first video here. And again, it's up to all of us to decide whether or not they're authentic. But let's first pull up this video here. It's very interesting.
But give me what's the pitch for Joe Biden?
Oh man, I mean, do you want me to go down the list?
Go down the list.
All right, I won't go into detail on each one, but I think generally his presidency has been incredibly successful in terms like one of the most productive presidents in modern American history, undoubtedly. American Rescue Plan, the bipartisan infrastructure deal, the bipartisan safer communities.
Now, if I was Tim Dillon, I'd be ready to eviscerate them with everything that they were saying there. The most productive president in U.S. history. That's debatable because we've had a lot of productive and very powerful presidents in U.S. history. Here, I want to name at least two. You have Theodore Roosevelt and FDR. Those were some very productive and very popular presidents in our country's lifetime. And the thing is, it's very difficult to really compare Biden to, let's say, people like that. We'll continue on.
Act, the PACT Act, the CHIPS Act, the Inflation Reduction Act, rejoining the Paris Climate Accord, rejoining the WHO, historic judicial nominees, first black woman on the Supreme Court, the child tax credit,
but I mean,
capping insulin at $35
by the way,
Medicare.
First black woman on the Supreme Court. What? Like, I mean, that's good.
I mean, but she's also like, aside from that, just putting an extremely qualified nominee on the Supreme Court. I mean,
okay, but say that. Say,
I think it's a combination of things.
Say like a first black woman who's an amazingly qualified, you know?
And we've spoken, and I've spoken.
Otherwise, we're just checking boxes. It doesn't seem to make sense.
Well, I've spoken to her qualifications, but what, like, the point is that she is obviously far more qualified than any of the nominees that Trump put on. So it's like, do you want qualified people, like political ideology aside? Do you want?
Now, let's be very clear here with the word qualified. Okay, qualified. Well, currently, everyone that's sitting in Washington, D.C., I really question their qualifications to be our leaders because, after all, it's all one big corrupt cesspool, especially with those associated with the Democratic Party and Republican Party. We do know that the Democratic Party likes to run on identity politics. Check marks. Now, look, I'm all for diversity. I'm all for people representing their communities and so much more because, let's face it, the United States is one big melting pot. But let's look at the people who are currently representing us, be it in Congress, be it in the office of the president, and yes, even in the courts. They're all interconnected to the neoliberal system. So qualification, it meets your qualifications, or at least the Democratic Party's qualifications. And that qualification is only following orders. You follow orders from the party. You won't deviate away from the party. You'll shut up. You'll take your bribe. You'll read what the establishment wants you to do, and that's it. And of course, obviously, this is very clear, the DNC and RNC and anyone that's associated with them or nominated or propped up by them have to play the little theater show, the little ECW, WWF kind of wrestling match in which we see both sides fighting and the American people, well, eating their popcorn and watching and thinking, that's my team. Team Red versus Team Blue. They represent my values.
Qualified people, or do you just want people who are going to rule?
Brett Kavanaugh is qualified. Amy Coney Barrett's qualified. You may disagree with them.
Amy Coney Barrett is nowhere near as qualified like Ketanji Brown Jackson.
Well, listen. Well, define qualifications in that sense.
Just time served. Like Amy Coney Barrett only had a very short amount of time actually serving as a judge, whereas Ketanji Brown Jackson had far more experience. Worked more in the field prior to being a judge. And her opinions were more consistent. Like Amy Coney Barrett had a lot of like inconsistencies.
Well, now we're politicizing it. So
Well,
we're just going to go with but whatever.
Okay. Now I want to pull up this next one here. Now, huge shout out to Big Mad Crab. Shout out to him. He was on our show recently. Look, I think this interview should have gone a little bit differently. Now, let's say somebody like Nico House or Jimmy Dore or Sabby Sabs or Fiorella were interviewing these two, Democratic cheerleaders, okay? They would have been hitting them left, right, up, and down in regards towards what the Democratic Party has failed to do and what Biden has failed to do. Let's look at the epic failures of the Biden-Harris administration. All right, this whole infrastructure package deal was shot down by, let's face it, the DNC. You've had, again, Democratic politicians play this game back and forth, in which, nothing is getting done. You have Senator Sinema, for example, who systematically was doing everything she could to roadblock anything that Joe Biden and his administration apparently wanted to get done. Hell, you even had Joe Manchin, Joe Biden's really good friend, derail the infrastructure package. The Democrats under Joe Biden and Kamala Harris have, again, continued on with a lot of Trump's foreign and domestic policies. You also have the fact that those kids are still in cages. Our economy right now is struggling. Homeowners are being evicted from their homes. Small businesses are being shut down. And of course, we have this ongoing crisis of student debt and medical bankruptcy. We're the richest country in the world, and we don't have health care. Richest country in the world, and we don't have health care. How the hell did this happen? Why did this happen? It shouldn't be like this. But unfortunately, Joe Biden made it very clear to the American people and everyone that was suffering from Trump derangement syndrome that nothing would fundamentally change. Nothing would fundamentally change. I do hope that eventually, more people start waking up to the fact that no matter how you vote, the establishment is always going to get what it wants. I want to pull up this other video here of Tim Dillon speaking to these, again, TikTok influencers. Let's play it.
Almost certain coup. Putin's ousted. He knows that. Or they leave and say, sorry, our bad. Or the second option, they use nuclear weapons, or they continue to fight in Ukraine. We've done nothing to bring about any resolution here where Russia can save face and we can have some type of solution. It seems like it's a very foolhardy foreign policy to isolate Russia in the way that we have and basically give them two options: absolute total defeat, or God forbid them using a nuclear weapon, or the continuation of this war and the death of more Ukrainians.
Well, to be clear, the United States and Ukraine have reached out to Russia to have peace talks.
Yeah,
like they've tried extensively, and on your China
It's
point,
actually been reported that we've discouraged peace
No,
talks.
I think
Okay, hold on. Here's how you know. And again, I want to be careful with the word grifter. I do. I want to be careful with it, but I want to acknowledge someone from the Twitch live stream that states, this is from Saul. There's no way these influencers know any of the administration's achievements unless the talking points were fed to them by a producer or one of their handlers. There's no way these guys are real, just a bunch of actors. So let's declare something here. Let's be very clear here. The United States did everything it could to discourage peace talks. And of course, as we have talked about this, and as so many others on social media, shout out to Unusual Whales, for example, on Twitter, as the Russian tanks were getting close to the Ukrainian border, are also fantastic politicians were given the information ahead of time. We've talked about how the DNC and RNC representatives in the House and Senate do insider trading. As those tanks were getting closer, what did our politicians in the United States Senate and House do? Did they, A, go ahead and call for a session of Congress so that we can get diplomatic talks happening right away to avoid a war? Or B, did it decide to start selling and buying shares associated with the military-industrial complex and big oil? In 2022, when the war started, our elected officials made a killing in stock trades. All of them now are ridiculously rich. What do you think happened? The answer is B. They didn't care about peace talks. They cared about the bottom line. The Biden-Harris administration could have done anything in their power, everything in their power, to prevent this war. But no, this war is being instigated. We're wasting billions of dollars into it. Why? War profiteering, war profiteering, war profiteering. Now, it's either A, these two TikTok influencers associated with the White House are either very ignorant, or they know what they're doing. They're just terrible actors, and they have no idea what they're talking about. Now, currently, of course, obviously, because they have a huge following on social media, they're going to have a good shield wall so they can deflect some criticism. But the thing is, and I've said this before on the show, you can state a lie. You can build a really well-structured lie. But all lies have the same thing. They all crumble. Their foundation is weak. This whole hype saying that Biden is the best president ever, most productive president ever, the Democrats are highly confident in which they can win. No. The Biden-Harris administration's track record is terrible. Both Biden and Harris's approval rating are in the lows. They are not popular. Hell, Biden's a little bit more popular than Kamala, but that's not saying much. And the fact that, again, you have people, and Tim Dillon just saying, hey, wait a minute. There were attempts at peace talks. They're dismissing it.
I think that's
actually
fake
been
news.
incredibly
Fake news.
reported.
Not
incredibly
credible
reported.
Because that source, right? I think Boris Johnson went to Ukraine and talked to Zelensky or something.
Well, first of all, we're the United States. NATO, we are giving them all the money. We're giving them all the weapons. How hard are we pushing peace talks if we're literally flooding the country with weapons? We're not requiring them. We should literally say, you need to have peace talks or we're not going to fund this war with no end in sight.
I think the idea was that we're not going to start talking peace until Russia agrees to, stop just mass murdering civilians and committing war crimes.
It's a war, and that's unrealistic.
Okay,
you have to come to the table.
Exactly. Well,
and not to mention, if we're talking about civilian casualties, again, these are terrible. But, the United States has quite a terrible track record when it comes down to civilian casualties as well. Just throwing it out there, folks. Just throwing it out there.
exactly.
So I'm just saying, when you're talking about sanity, you say Donald Trump's a lunatic. I might agree with you, but I see 4 years of Donald Trump. We're not in a lot of foreign entanglements. We're not on the verge of a real problem with Russia and China.
Okay, let's be very clear here. All right. There's a lot that can be said about Donald Trump. One, I'm not a fan of him because he's a Republican, and he also used to be a Democrat too. And my standing with the DNC and RNC, okay? We got to abolish the two-party system, get money out of politics, hell, evict all of Congress. Now, under Trump's watch, let's face it, as soon as he started launching those big, beautiful missiles in Syria, then that's when corporate media said he was finally president. Don't forget, Trump was also instigating a little bit of a fight with the leader of North Korea. Also, Trump had a little situation in which he ordered the killing of a high-ranking Iranian official. That's a thing that happened. And let's face it, Trump had his back and forth with China and Russia too. Was it to the scale of what Biden is doing? No. And that's frightening to me. That Trump, a reality TV show clown, and that's what he is, an orange Cheeto clown, was able to be somewhat more stable in international relations than the Biden-Harris administration. Already, this administration is trying to instigate further conflict with China and Russia to a scale which I've never seen in any other presidential administration. Not to make a joke of anything, but the Biden-Harris administration turned it past a 10 and put it to an 11. That's how bad things are. So let's just be careful. We're going to start praising Trump. All right, fine, whatever. But let's face it, he was no saint or angel either.
To be honest, I'm seeing right now this bellicose foreign policy led by neocons, war hawks, who are now all on the Democratic side. Bill Kristol hates Donald Trump. All of these guys that supported the Iraq war hate Donald Trump. They are now all apparatchiks for Biden's administration. They're on MSNBC. They are pushing war. They are pushing the continuation of not only this war, they're pushing maybe further conflicts with China. So to me, when you talk about sanity, I say to myself, that seems insane.
Exactly. It's madness and stupidity. Now, everything I say here is just an analysis. Those are just two snippets. I encourage everyone to check out the full interview that Tim Dillion did on his show, if you could sit through it. I tried to sit through most of it without trying to rip out my hair. It was a difficult watch. And again, everything that we say and do on social media has a long-lasting effect. Now, on yesterday's show, Roger Meadows, good friend of the show, was able to message me and say, well, hey, wait a minute. Some of my friends who are diehard Democrats are saying they're having a hard time getting younger people to volunteer and support the Democratic Party, not just the presidential candidates, but any Democratic candidate at all. And that is a little bit of a sliver of hope. But we need to understand, and what all of us need to prepare for, is that the propaganda, the yelling is going to intensify. They're going to do everything they can to fearmonger people into supporting Team Red or Team Blue. Because, yes, we're all too familiar with what the Democratic Party is going to do. We saw it happen in 2016 and 2020. What I'm telling all of you is nothing new. The Republican Party is going to do the same thing as well. But it's going to be intensified, in which they're going to be yelling at you. Let's say you choose not to vote, or you want to vote third party. You are going to be vilified. You are going to be turned into this bad guy. Your people are going to start yelling at you. And you need what we all need to do is to be ready with facts and information, because so much of our population has been successfully brainwashed into obeying what we see on corporate media. Now, to be fair here, a lot of Americans are waking up. But let's face it, social media, when we're on our cell phones or on our personal computers, it has a huge reach. And many people tend to believe what they see, what's being presented to them. And so when you have individuals, let's say, who are either Democrat or Republican, and they're trying to get the next generation involved, you're going to see the same propaganda being played over and over again. You got to vote the Democratic Party because they care about the values. They're so productive. They care. We need to get more Democrats in office. Or you're going to see that from the Republican Party. We got to support the Republican Party because they care about freedom and liberty and justice. This is going to be a very interesting election cycle. I fear we might see a repeat of two old men fighting over a cold bowl of soup, that being Biden and Trump, that cold bowl of soup being America. And if that's the case, if it truly repeats itself, it's a sad state of affairs. We've got to be better than this. And we have to break away from the propaganda that is slowly killing us. It's a poison. And this poison is unforgiving. Prepare yourselves, folks. It's going to get worse.